afternoon, everyone. I should say that as I'm turning this way rather than walking away. I'd like to introduce the candidates and explain the format for today's forum. Running for the 2nd Assembly District are incumbent Andre Jacques and challenger Larry Preuss. Am I pronouncing his name correctly? Okay. Mr. Preuss is unable to attend today's event. However, he has provided an opening statement, which I will read on his behalf here in a few moments. Running for the 25th Assembly District are Jim Bry and Paul Tittle. The current 25th Assembly District Representative, Bob Ziegelbauer, has chosen to retire. So both gentlemen, I guess, are challengers. Is that the correct way to say it? Anyway, each candidate has been given 4 questions in advance. Hopefully we'll have time for all 4. We're planning on 3 for sure. And they will each have 2 minutes to answer the question. Now, after each candidate has given their answer, we'll take time, about 2 minutes, 2 questions from the audience that are specific to the topic addressed. There will be time at the end, time permitting, to ask more questions that are not germane to the 3 questions that we posed to the various candidates. So we'll begin today with the 2nd District candidates, Andre Jacques and Larry Preuss. And Mr. Jacques, if you would take 2 minutes. And by the way, Abby has cards, and I think you all know that's how that's all going to work. So Andre, we'll get 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you for everybody that's here today. Always enjoy coming to Manitowoc Chamber events, and except for the couple occasions where I've been stuck down in Madison, always been a very enjoyable experience and gotten some great legislative ideas as well. It's been a great honor to represent the 2nd Assembly District in my first term, northern Manitowoc, southern Brown County, and been very active legislatively in economic development, criminal justice system, local government and tort reform areas, dealing with unfunded mandates, eliminating those, Riverside Foods and unnecessary regulation, expanding open enrollment, again, the criminal justice system reforms in my position as Vice Chair of the Criminal Justice and Corrections Committee, working on landmark legislation like the multi-jurisdictional TIF bill, eliminating the land use conversion tax, and the manufacturing and agriculture production credit. Certainly, if there's anybody here that I haven't yet had an opportunity to tour your facility or work with you on legislation, please give me a call or just stop by after the forum here, and I'd love to set something up. So, it's been a very interesting 2 years. My bald spot has grown precipitously, but we faced some very difficult choices, going from a $3.6 billion budget deficit to now what's projected to be $275 million in the black, and some opportunities to address some other government reforms, I hope, as a result of that. It's something where, my opponent, I wish he could be here today, because I do enjoy every opportunity to discuss the differences between us, and I think that there certainly are clear decisions. I have a lot of respect for my opponent, and I think as somebody who has he has a background as both a teacher, labor negotiator for the teachers, as well as a school board member, which is, I think, a lot of what made Act 10 necessary. But he also has, what I heard recently, a proposal to effectively double taxes on most small businesses. So if that's something that he'll address, hopefully we can discuss that later on as well. Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Andre. And as I mentioned, I will be reading Mr. Preuss's opening statement, and this I will do this verbatim. To the members of the Chamber of Manitowoc County and guests, though I am currently traveling between Oregon and Wisconsin, the Chamber staff has given me the opportunity to share a 2-minute position paper by way of an introduction into my campaign for the 2nd Assembly District. They've also indicated that they would share with you a simple print piece that I use when visiting 2nd Assembly District residents. I'll let that piece speak to my education, career paths, and the overriding focus of my campaign. I acknowledge that it is risky to share with you my position on the various issues challenging our state and nation. The opportunity for feedback and/or post-event discussion is of course not available in this format. Nonetheless, I do want to share some thoughts on these particular issues. Family supporting jobs and increasing the take-home pay of the middle class. To promote and maintain a strong business environment, you of course need customers/consumers. I would suggest to you that these consumers are our primary job creators. Granted, they are not the only job creators, but again, I believe they are the primary source of new jobs. What is important is that the consumers take home a larger share of the nation's income than they currently are. Yes, there is an inequity in the distribution of the nation's income. The economy during the time of the Great Prosperity, in parens 1947 to 1975, saw a parallel increase in an individual's income with the nation's income. Now here is why I really wish I were in the room with you, because I'd like your feedback on the following possible strategies to increase the take-home pay of the middle class. And then again, parens, by the way, 90% of us self-identify as members of the middle class, though I'm not buying the honesty in that number, again, parens. Then you get several bullet points here. Decrease the state income tax and increase the tax on goods and services. Second point, eliminate the state income tax altogether, and then he has in parens the states of Washington and Wyoming. Third point, eliminate the state sales tax on goods and services, again, parens the states of Oregon and Montana. Next point, eliminate the state income tax for those making $75,000 or less. Retain the current state income tax on those making between $75,000 and $250,000, and doubling the state income tax for those making over $250,000. Again, parens, note this is a concept only, with the actual figures to be determined by, quote, honest economists. And next point, study what went on during the Great Prosperity, 1947 to 1975, and apply the lessons learned. Time to wrap it up. I will ask that you access my website, www.Preuss, that's P-R-U-E-S-S, 4, the number 4, assembly.com, for further information relative to issues that have come to the forefront for me. And please, I would greatly enjoy an opportunity to sit down and engage in a civil conversation with you about the quality of life for all the citizens of our state. And that is Mr. Preuss's opening statement. So next, we'd like to hear from the 25th District candidates, Jim Rye and Paul Tittle. Jim?
Thank you, Steve, and thank you all for attending this fine forum today. It's always an honor and a privilege to be part of a group that is interested in our state and also local government, which you know I'm part of. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jim Bry, and I'm the Democratic candidate for the 25th Assembly District position currently held by our good friend Bob Ziegelbauer. First, a little background on myself. I'm a graduate of Lincoln High School here in Manitowoc. I attended and graduated the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, where I earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Political Science. While at Stevens Point, I was active in student government and was a recipient of the Chancellor's Leadership Award as a graduating senior. I'm currently employed at Stecker Machine Company in the shipping and receiving department. I've been there for 13 years. I'm married. My wife's name is Jody, and we have 2 wonderful children, Eric and Elizabeth. As you probably are well aware, I'm a member of the Manitowoc Common Council, and I've been there since 1992. I am also a member of the Manitowoc County Board, which I was first elected in 1996. I was County Board Chairperson from 2006 to 2010, and I was also served 1 term as Common Council President in 1998. I've served on nearly every committee that the city and the county could throw at me. So I've been very proud of my accomplishments here at the city and the county. Currently, I serve as the Finance Committee Chair for the Manitowoc County Board, and I'm also Chair of the Public Property and Safety Committee for the City Council. I'm also involved with Family Care, which I'm sure you're well aware of. I'm the chairperson of the Lakeland Care District, which encompasses Manitowoc, Winnebago, and Fond du Lac counties with Family Care. During my time in public office, I have developed a reputation of being a hard worker who listens to all sides of an issue. In other words, I do the work. That is what I want to bring to Madison. We need legislators who are not afraid to work with the other side to keep this state moving forward. We need legislators who can compromise to achieve workable solutions. I am that person. So with that, I welcome your questions today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim, and Abby's doing a great job with keeping us on track here. And next, Paul Tittle.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for all of you for coming out. I know there's a lot of times, a lot of places you could go to have a better lunch than what you're having today. I'm sure it's probably just fine, but sitting and talking to a bunch of politicians is probably not number one on your list. But thanks for coming anyhow. I think it's a great showing, and I think it's a great idea that you guys have putting this on. As you know, I am Paul Tittle. I've been in business here for 25 years. I started 2 small businesses in Manitowoc. I'm married. I'm a lifelong resident. I have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. And, it's kind of a privilege, I think, serving in any capacity. Over the past couple of years, since 2004 to 2008, I served on the Manitowoc City Council. And from 2006 to 2000, up until right now, I'm still on the county board. And I consider that a privilege to serve you, the taxpayer, in that capacity. And I think going on to Madison is not one thing that I ever aspired to do. It was, a long time ago that I thought maybe I would try to serve in politics. And I never really aspired to go to Madison. There's been a lot of kind people that have been very encouraging and very kind with their words and asking me to go because I have a strong common sense approach. I'll work with all the people that are interested in working, whether they be Democrat, Republican, or Independent, to try to get this state working again. Because I think that's above anything else. We need to get jobs in this state. So I'm pro-business because I am a small business owner. And I just ask you to consider visiting my website, tittleassembly.com, and consider voting for me on November 6th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And now for our first question, and just to give you guys a heads up, you each get to take the lead for each of the questions. So first, Jim, you'll be first, and then Paul, and then Andre for your 2 minutes in response to the question. Question number 1. Wisconsin Act 10, also known as the Wisconsin Budget Repair Bill, has had a significant impact on our state over the past year. Recently, Judge Juan Colas of Dane County enjoined portions of the act related to public sector collective bargaining from being implemented. Do you support the implementation of Act 10? And we're looking for a yes or no answer, and then support for your position with specific examples of those sections of the Act you support or do not support. Jim?
Toughest question first, I guess, is what we're talking about. I think most employees, public sector employees, realized that concessions had to be made, and that's why Act 10 came to fruition. What scared me about it was, and I think the general public, is there was very little to no public input on this entire issue. Should the public sector workers pay more for their health insurance and their worker contributions to retirement? Absolutely. And I think most of them realize that. I have heard that from many public workers and teachers along the way through this campaign. The sad thing about it was they were willing to come to the table at the time. They conceded that, yes, we are going to pay for these benefits. We are going to pay more for our retirement. But they were ignored. They were cast aside. So Act 10 went into full implementation. Now, which we all knew was going to happen, there was going to be challenges to Act 10. And whether it be in Dane County, where it actually has been ruled unconstitutional, or it would have been in Manitowoc County Circuit Court, things are going to continue on. But now is the opportunity, in my mind, to get everybody to work together again. We have a great chance and a great time here with a court case that is moving forward to get everybody together, roll up our sleeves, and work out a compromise solution that can benefit everybody. Do we want to waste more money on court cases? Because eventually, I have a feeling this one, if it keeps going on, will eventually get to the U.S. Supreme Court. In my mind, that's wasted time and definitely wasted money. Let's come to a solution right now. So with that was the end of my question.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And Paul?
Do I support Act 10? Yes. I think it was something necessary. I think the governor took over with a $3.6 billion deficit in our state, and something had to be done. Now, the paying more for the health insurance, a lot of you are small business owners, and a lot of you are paying for your own health insurance. And you look at the percentage that you're paying, it was a lot higher, I would guess, than what it was before Act 10. And Act 10 basically allowed the now public sector workers to pay more into their health plans. Some were actually paying more. In Manitowoc County, we were actually, as the past 2 years, worked with Bob Ziegelbauer, the county executive, and we were actually able to use the tools of Wisconsin Act 10 in order to save the taxpayers $1.3 million and have a 0% tax increase over the past year. A total of $1 billion has been saved, and jobs have been created in the state of Wisconsin. Because I think they're realizing that in Wisconsin, it's a lot better place to do business. So Act 10, yeah, it works. Will there be some portions of it struck down by the law? Maybe. But I think it was a step in the right direction. And I also know that before the Act 10 actually became law, because it got delayed in publishing by the Secretary of State, well, while they waited, there was a bunch of municipalities, counties, and cities and school districts that actually went around and rushed to get contracts signed to retain parts of Act 10. So as far as working together, maybe they would have worked together if they would have rushed and had the savings built right into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Now, Andre?
Thanks, Steve. Yes, I do support Act 10, and certainly as was mentioned before and in my opening statement, there was a tremendous turnaround in our state finances as a result. We finally were budgeting honestly, matching revenues and expenditures, and not only with a budget repair bill, but a budget bill that I was proud to vote for. Now, if you look at the actual ruling that was made in Dane County, it doesn't really have a state impact. What it does have an impact is the ability of local governments to stay within their budget because of changes that have already been made. I think that's one of the keys. If you look at how we were able to accomplish everything that we did without a tax increase, and also at the same time give some additional controls to local governments, yes, there's more that we need to do and will do in the next biennium. But we saw certainly a variety of problems with the past system. Whether it was collective arguing or the "you can't make me" style of negotiating that Bob Ziegelbauer has talked about many, many times. The unions often were asking for local government, the taxpayers, to give up more than they would actually save under, say, healthcare plan changes. The quid pro quo system was making it impossible for them to capture the savings. At the same time, not only would there be better decisions made, but things that could allow for more workers to stay on the job as opposed to being laid off. As far as some of the solutions, the Dane County Circuit Court has gotten a very bad rap along the lines of the federal court out in California, where you can bring just about any case and get an injunction, which ultimately will be overturned by a higher court. And that's why you saw the Madison Teachers Union rushing through to ask for an extension. The state Supreme Court has already ruled on Act 10, and ultimately that's why you're going to see this corrected. But whether it's 3-hour call-ins, that were required under contract just for somebody to unlock the doors and turn off the lights, or WBA Trust with Wrightstown. But yeah, I'm running out of time here, but thank you very
She's
much.
good. Okay. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. And now, just to refresh your memory, we will take up to 2 questions from the audience, but we do want these questions to be specific to Act 10 at this point. So, do we have any questions? Oh, a whole bunch of hands. Jill, I think yours went up first, so.
Okay, thanks. And this question is for Jim Bride. You mentioned specifically that this is a good time to talk about bringing compromise solutions to the Act 10 situation. I'm curious to know what those would be, because I do know you professionally, and I know you're always a good solutions guy. So I'd love to hear what those compromise solutions would be.
Yeah, I think, so that everybody can hear? Sure. Yeah, please, Jim. And everybody heard the question?
Yes, I
Okay.
think. Good question, Jill. You know, and we definitely, and you've been involved as a local alderman person, or alder, I should say alder person. We definitely have solutions, compromise solutions. Never in the state of Wisconsin have we been so divisive in our actions. I mean, families can't even sit together now and talk normal politics anymore, because now it's one side versus the other. I thought there was a lot of room for compromise in this whole with Act 10, that we could start bargaining in good faith with the unions again. And I think coming away from the table, that maybe everybody's a little bit upset, that means a compromise was reached. Why? I think both sides definitely in this situation had to give. We, at the city level, we've got a great level of that, a great operation through my 20 years of compromising. You're coming away from a bargaining table with questions and comments that were solved and solutions that came out of it. And everybody left a little bit, well, you know what, it wasn't the best solution, but hey, we're happy, but compromise was reached. There's no reason why we couldn't have done that at the state level.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. One more question. Yes, sir.
For Paul Kittle. Franklin Roosevelt spoke against public sector collective bargaining. I just would like to get your position on his whole viewpoint on that, and why public sector collective bargaining doesn't work.
Well, I think, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a Democrat and spoke against collective bargaining. The federal government and their employees don't have collective bargaining rights. That probably should tell you something. Sometimes we have actually been in, they'll file a grievance with, say, the city or the county or a school district. And typically, then you'll go through the grievance process, and then you can go to mediation, arbitration, and it hasn't worked. It's always been in favor of the public sector worker. And so I think there are some things that also you as the taxpayer are paying the bill. And as you're paying the bill, it costs a lot more each year if we're just keep continuing to see the health insurance and the retirement benefits go up higher and higher. Where right now with the county, we're actually looking at having to come up with an extra amount of money this year, as well as I believe the city is, to pay into the Wisconsin retirement for our employees. And because of that, we don't know where we're going to get that from. In a down economy, when people are struggling to just even stay in their house, that's not a time when we should be raising taxes. And so that is, I guess, the biggest problem with collective bargaining.
Okay, thank you. Now on to question 2. The Wisconsin Manufacturing and Agriculture Credit is available beginning January 1st of 2013. The credit is available to people or companies engaged in manufacturing and agricultural activities in Wisconsin. The credit can be claimed if real property owned or rented by an individual or company is used to manufacture or to grow, produce, or extract in whole or in part tangible personal property. The credit will be phased in over the next 4 years. Do you support this tax credit? If so, why? If not, why? And Paul, you're up first this time.
At least I'm getting my exercise on something now.
I'm going to stand here instead of walking.
Am I in support of this tax credit? Absolutely. I think when you start taking the money and you can maybe have businesses invest into jobs, into job creation, I think you're actually going to come out in the strong end of this. Actually, one other thing is that if you have a strong, and Wisconsin is known for a strong manufacturing climate. If you have a strong manufacturing climate, you're going to have a strong retail climate, a strong tourism climate. All of that will actually just fall into place. So the tax credit, I believe, will actually help create jobs. Also, if they're investing more in their companies, investing more in their workers, there will be one thing that they'll all have in common. They'll be paying more income taxes because the workers pay income taxes. 51% of all of your taxes collected in the state of Wisconsin are from income tax. It's not from the tax on corporations. So yes, I would support this, and I believe that it will help to create jobs.
Thank you. Andre, you're next.
Thank you. Yes, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I actually was the lead co-sponsor of the bill, which was Assembly Bill 171, which later was then incorporated in the state budget. So I am a very strong supporter of this proposal and very glad to see it coming to fruition. It not only helps with our employment, but with property tax base in the state, and several other states have done this successfully. It has bipartisan support in many other states. And you know, it's federally known as the Qualified Production Activities Credit. You know, it's something that even is available in the federal tax code. So it makes us competitive. It rewards Wisconsin manufacturers, hopefully keeps us more here in state and helps us to continue our manufacturing turnaround here in Wisconsin. We are a very heavy manufacturing state, and I've already heard from one of the major employers in my district, Coating Excellence International in Wrightstown, that this is the sort of thing that not only will they benefit from, but it's going to be helpful to them as they look at further expansions. And of course, in the past, when we didn't have as competitive economic climate here in Wisconsin, they had to move one of their plants to Kentucky. Now they're firmly looking in Wisconsin for further expansion, where they do have the bulk of their operations, and hopefully we'll be able to see those sorts of things continue. And like I said, I certainly support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. Jim?
Anything that creates jobs in the state right now is definitely a good thing. And based on what I know about this act, I am definitely in favor of it. The only concern I have right now is whether there's accountability with this act. You know, at the local level, we definitely provide incentives for local businesses to work to create jobs. Government is not the answer to creating jobs, but it's part of the solution. And I think we've done a great job at the local level. I look at building a customer, companies like Manitowoc Custom Molding, which have benefited from local loan programs. And definitely the tax credit thing at the state of Wisconsin will definitely help if it creates jobs that can support families in our great state. But I still am concerned that the lack of accountability with this act might be there. We need to make sure that these tax credits are creating jobs that are helping families out. We definitely need that accountability. We can talk all we want about the future, but let's look a little bit at the past 2 years. We are ranked near the bottom in job creation in the state. We need to change that. And hopefully through actions like this with this act, we'll start doing that. Wisconsin cannot be a leader in job development if we keep going the route we're going. Over 50 job bills were introduced in last session, and not one of them were taken up. Granted, they were Democratic side ones, and I'm not sure they all would have passed. But I think there was a room once again to reach some compromise solutions between all those bills, because job creation in the state is definitely priority one.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And now, 2 questions from the audience specific to this particular topic. Jeff?
I have one for Mr. Fry. You talk about accountability for this tax credit. Would you have some sort of formula to say if your tax credit was $1,000, you must create a half a job or a half a full-time equivalent? Or how would you propose to hold people accountable?
And Jeff, that's exactly right. You know, I'm using our industrial revolving loan plan we have here in the city of Manitowoc. I'm a member of Industrial Development Corporation, which administers that loan for the city of Manitowoc. When we, according to our bylaws, when we give out certain percentages of money, that manufacturer or business or wherever that money is going must create X amount of number of jobs. So yes, I do think there's some ability to an accountability that if you're going to get this much credit with this tax, you're supposed to create X amount of jobs. I think there's a lot of things to do with that. I think that plan would work perfect.
What number do you put on it?
I'm sorry?
You're pretty broad ranged at what numbers do you put on it?
Well, that's,
How much is a credit worth for a job?
I guess, you know, that would have to be determined. I'm not an expert on that. I guess, you know, we got city planners, county development people all across the state of Wisconsin. We got people at the state that can look at this, but I think we could come up with some pretty good figures that would work.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Do we have another question on this topic? Yes, sir.
My question is for Mr. Bry. Mr. Bry, as a Democrat in the Assembly, how are you going to resist the overwhelming pressure by your Democrat colleagues to increase taxes, especially on corporations and small business, not to mention the ordinary middle-class taxpayer?
I guess I relate back to my local government experience on the Common Council and the County Board. And granted, it's not a partisan position, but I think most of us know which way a person leans or has some inkling on what their political beliefs are. I've always been known as the maverick. I've stood alone on a lot of issues by myself, voting no or voting yes. So what I feel is what is best for my constituents is what I'm going to do. And after doing the homework, doing the numbers, doing the investigations, that's the way I will vote. Will it be tough to withstand the pressure of the caucus leaders? I don't know. I've never been in a situation like that. But I know it from my heart that I will do what is best for the 25th district. So, will I make a pledge I'll never raise taxes? No, I can't do that. I will never do that because look what happened to our former president. But not just in a case like that, because, you know, we're talking about tax reform. And there is potential tax reform. Well, I mean, use an extreme example, but let's say we decided to rid ourselves of the state income tax, which has been proposed once already here today. But then we're going to increase the sales tax by 40%. Great, yeah, we reduced that, but you know, you're still increasing the sales tax. I'm just using that as an extreme example. That's why I can never say I would never increase taxes. I don't know how anybody can make that statement, to be honest with you. You have to look at everything individually, which I definitely had a record here at the local level.
Thank you, Jim. Now for question 3. Wisconsin is, one of 10 states with a voter ID mandate. However, this new enacted law has constitutional challenges that have it currently suspended. Do you believe that we need voter ID in Wisconsin, and what effect does it have on the electorate? Please give specific examples to support your opinion. Andre, you are first up this time.
Well, yes, I support voter ID. I believe that it brings greater integrity to the election process. And that's really what I heard from many local election officials who asked me to vote in support of it. That's always been my position. And, you know, I can remember an election in the city of Green Bay, an aldermanic election that was decided by 5 votes. Actually 4 votes after a recount. One of the votes in that election they know was cast invalid. Somebody showed up to vote, had his ID, and you know, we didn't have photo ID at the time, and was told that he had already voted. Well, that wasn't the case. In fact, he looked quite a bit different from the guy who used his name earlier in the day. And you know, when I was a student at UW-Madison, I can remember election officials at the university, paid by the student government, that came in and said, come on everybody, it's time to go vote. I can vouch for everybody on this floor. I was in the residence halls at the time. Well, there were people that said, well, I already voted absentee. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Come on, we got beer, we got whatever, we got pizza. Well, that was something where, as much as I warned people to the contrary, people went and voted. And, we do see a number of problems. And actually, one thing I talk about is we have a problem with welfare fraud. Food share system particularly. The Quest cards, where people are using multiple cards for the same purchase, where people we know are basically paying 50 cents on the dollar for Quest cards, and using somebody else's Quest card, they manage to get a new one every month by just calling and saying they lost it, it's automatic. Well, one of the things we requested as a waiver was to allow us to, as a state, to put people's photo IDs on the back of the Quest card. Seems like a simple way to solve that problem. The Obama administration said no. So, but quite frankly, I think that we know this problem is going on with other things like the food share program. I think it's good enough for voting, considering the number of things we have to show photo ID for already. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. Jim?
Personally, I have no problem with showing an ID to vote, to cast your vote in an election. I think overwhelmingly in the 25th district, if a poll was taken, and granted it was a little different from the district at the size, but over 70% of the people in this area supported voter ID. My concerns come in within that people that are legitimate voters, and I think Representative Jacques actually mentioned some of them, that being turned away at the polls if they don't have the proper ID. I think things could be tweaked with this. The legislature didn't allow to use military IDs in this formula. They did not allow to use student IDs in this formula. Things like that could be reconsidered once again. But in the haste of trying to create some legislation to get through on a fast track, a lot of these simple ideas were not put through the legislation. So, am I in favor of it? Like I said, I have no problem with it, but I think it should be tweaked.
Thank you, Jim. Paul?
Yes. I'm in favor of voter ID. If you want to go and rent a video, you want to go and get a book out of a library, get a library card, you want to go get a bank account, you actually need a photo ID for all of them. So I would suggest that, and they also made provisions in that bill. Our own senator, Senator Joe Lightbaum, is the author of this bill. And he made provisions in there, so if you are, say, poor and you can't afford to maybe pay for that ID, and I don't know what an ID is because I have a valid driver's license, but I think it's like $18. But there's provisions in there for you to get it for free. And so I really believe that it is incumbent upon a person to actually do their due diligence to have that privilege to go out and vote. I mean, we take voting so for granted in this country. It's scary, and also it upsets me because the people in other nations are fighting and dying, and we've lost our men and women in uniform for other people to have the freedoms that we have, and the freedom to vote is one of them. And I think we shouldn't take that for granted, and I think we should go and we should do our best to go out to the polls, but still only coming up in this election, probably 60% will show up. Shame on the 40%.
Thank you, Paul. Once again, any questions germane to this topic from the audience? Justin.
I guess it's an open-ended question, but we always hear the example that you need an ID to rent a video. The difference is, though, that it doesn't state in our Constitution that you have the right to get a video. It says you have the right to vote. Why should we be putting restrictions on voting? And why are we always using those? I've never had to show my ID to rent a video. I guess I must be a okay guy. But why are we putting more and more restrictions on voting? And since it is a constitutional right that we all have, why would we restrict that?
I guess we'll draw straws, or whoever wants to volunteer. Andre?
I'll volunteer.
And then we'll just go in order if you guys all want to.
I guess I would just say, because we have the rule of one person, one vote. And if somebody is allowed to vote fraudulently, or more than one time, or any number of challenges to the integrity of our election system, that dilutes the right that I or anybody else has as an individual to have their vote be counted properly. And that's really what it becomes. And that's why you've seen challenges to voter ID in several other states, and why you consistently see it upheld. Yes, there are a variety of things. I mean, union elections, many times you're required to show your ID before casting your ballot. I'm not saying that that is in any way inappropriate. I think that if we have common sense, protections for what is really a sacred right in this country, that, like I said, I certainly support photo ID, because unless you have the integrity of the system upheld, the whole foundation of our democracy, our republic, is threatened.
Paul, do you want to make a comment? Sure.
Well, I believe, yes, it's in our Constitution, but it's also to protect our Constitution. I mean, you are electing people that are going to either stand or trample on the Constitution. So it's very important that we have the one person, one vote. Recently, maybe it's 20 years back already, our county treasurer, it was a dead tie. And it ended up being a tie even after a recount. And what did they do? I think they cut the cards in order to have one person could have actually changed the outcome of that election. Just one person voting. And I just don't think that there's anything that is so bad about actually showing your picture ID. I've done it for a few years already. In fact, I think the ladies at the polls, I put it right down there. I think they like it because they can read my name right off of the picture ID. So, and I believe we have to maintain the integrity of the election.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Mayor, for that point, because I didn't address that in my initial comments, because I do think the way Wisconsin's Voter Act law that was passed, and I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but in my interpretation, I do think it was probably unconstitutional. With that, though, I do think, like I said, I have no problem with voter ID. I do think that using the right ways, we can make it constitutional without going through the court system and going all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Because I have a feeling this is kind of heading that way, just like the legislation with Act 10 is heading. To me, it's wasting time. It's wasting money. We have bigger fish to fry right now. And to theorize on what happened or potentially could happen, we're not about that. We have to deal in facts. And the facts are, there isn't much voter fraud in the state of Wisconsin that's documented. If somebody has all this documentation, please show me. The one I heard about recently, and it's kind of ironic, and I don't know how far it's going, is Representative Robin Voss, who's chair of the Joint Finance Committee. There's allegations that his estranged wife lives in Wyoming, and she's been voting in Wisconsin in the last 3 elections. It's kind of ironic.
Thanks, Jim. Another question related to this subject, otherwise we'll move on to our last question of the day. Okay. I'm sorry.
I want to ask a question.
Kerry?
All the evidence, all the demographic evidence that the voter ID will adversely affect voting on part of old people in rather large numbers, and voting on the part of minority groups who have really truly struggled to get the vote in this country. But in what appears to me to be a transparently politically motivated gimmick that's in response to a problem that does not exist, that there'll be large groups of people who really truly will be negatively affected by this process, by this legislation.
Gentlemen?
Is there a question?
Your question is?
Oh, yeah.
Question.
Okay.
What's the response to that?
I think we leave it kind of open-ended here, and
I'm happy to answer your question, Gary. We actually did have photo ID implemented in Wisconsin. You probably recall that. We actually had a trial run. By all accounts, and particularly checking with my local elected officials, ran very smoothly. Didn't hear complaints. Didn't hear about people disenfranchised or turned away en masse at the polls. Didn't seem like it was too burdensome. Now, if you talk about, and certainly, if Jim Bry wants to talk about whatever instances of voter fraud he wants to, I don't think that hurts the case any. But, even when you're talking about veterans' ID cards, there was one gentleman who showed up at the polls, one mind you, that he didn't vote in protest because he had his veterans' ID card that didn't have his address on it. Didn't have his address. That's a key component to being able to determine where you vote. Now, he had his driver's license with him, which was a valid photo ID. He was doing it as a partisan stunt to try to draw a court case. But the bottom line is, we have seen this implemented in other states. We've seen it implemented in Wisconsin. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not something that people I've talked to have any problem with showing their photo ID. Thank you.
gentlemen, any further comments?
I don't have any.
Okay, we'll move on to our last question then. If elected, what will be your highest priority agenda item that will have an economic impact on your district? And let's see. We took it in order before, so we'll just do it this way. Jim, would you be so kind as to be first?
Been mentioned many times before today, but I'll reiterate it once again. Job creation is the number one priority in the state of Wisconsin right now. As I mentioned before, right now we rank towards the bottom in job creation and job development. And maybe there are some good signs. There are some good signs that the economy is starting to turn around. I see it in my employment. I see it in manufacturing. But there's more we can do. We also saw record cuts in the last biennium budget to education. We need those technical schools and universities to be funded so people can learn a trade, so people can be fully gainfully employed. Without that, what's the use of even trying to do anything? We saw these creations coming forward, but it just seems to be stagnant, for lack of a better term. We need to keep this job, we need to bring the state back together, and job creation is definitely priority one.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Paul?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is that we have to create a business climate here in this state. That companies, jobs, they're going to want to expand here. You know, the years and years ago of getting the car manufacturer or the Microsoft to move into your state and your company or your area, them days are over. We have to work with the existing manufacturers out there, the existing businesses that are out there, and we have to help them so that they don't have obstacles in their place to creating jobs. And there has been a lot of obstacles in the place of, for creating jobs in the past. And I think we need to work on that. Also, I think we need to work on some of the other things I think would be probably worker training. I remember I was on the Economic Development Corporation board, and we were talking about worker training. And that was one of the biggest things that they needed. They needed worker training. And the companies need the ability and the tax credits and or the state to stand behind them to have workers being trained in various jobs. And I think probably the last thing is taxes. Recently I was visiting with a gentleman at the door. I think he said he was retired 18 years, so I don't want to venture on his age, but he was retired 18 years. He gets $900 a month in Social Security. And his taxes in the city of Manitowoc are $3,500 a year. That's 1/3 of his income is actually going towards living in his very own home, his dream home that he's lived in for 50 years and built. And I think that's we need to make sure that we are taking care of our senior, our elderly, because he doesn't have many places to turn. You know, a third of his income goes to living in his own house. That doesn't include heat or anything else. So we need to make sure we take care of our seniors that have taken care of us for many years and given us this great state. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Andre?
Well, one of the items that Paul just talked about was worker training. As it happens, I have a proposal on a worker training tax credit, which provides 5 to 8% of the salary for apprentices or other new employees for on-site training. Something I'm working on with Senator Lipham, but something that, quite frankly, there are ideas in the legislature that get lost over time, and it really is up to the initiative of individual legislators. A few sessions ago, there was a legislative study committee that basically recommended an earlier version of this proposal that I'm coming forward with the apprenticeship tax credit. And we're looking to expand that to, again, help those businesses that certainly have the capacity and can certainly partner with the tech college system and others, but to expand hiring, they certainly have the work available to them, but they just need that little help with the skills gap for retraining employees. So also would work on eliminating the sales tax for electricity and natural gas. I think that would certainly help our manufacturing sector. Currently, it's already exempt for 6 months out of the year. This would make it 12 months. But beyond that, certainly welcome your suggestions. And I think that it's something where, if I could just briefly respond to my opponent's proposals from his letter at the beginning. He talked about eliminating various taxes. He didn't talk about the taxes that he would then have to raise or specify any spending that he would decrease. So I just ask people to keep that in mind as well. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we still have a fair amount of time, right, Karen? Any topic? So, Connie, you were first.
Connie Loden with the Economic Development Corporation. You all mentioned worker training and education as one of the keys in helping make us more competitive in business. And studies definitely show one of the most competitive nations in the world is Finland, and they definitely take a different approach to education than we are in the U.S. and here in Wisconsin. It's much more project-based and applied learning-based, incorporating innovation and creativity and melding science with creativity and design. What might you all do to promote and drive a revamp to our education system that might help create an atmosphere of more competitiveness and a more successful outcomes in our education system?
Gentlemen, who would like first shot?
I guess I will.
Okay.
I think we have to get back to some of the skill training that we had in the high school. I remember when I went to high school, we had a lot of different shops courses. And there was a lot of people that are out there that are not going to go to college, that are not going to go on and get their, bachelor's degree and master's degree. They're going to be working and manufacturing in this state. So I think we got to give them the ability, and in the schooling, make sure that they have the ability to get trained in some of the very basics of, the shops courses that we'll actually give them. Also, to make sure that they are well trained in math, because every one of them is going to be related to math in one way or another. So that's what I would say is that, work on the skilled training in the high schools, actually.
Right?
Sure, that's what you thank you. Sure.
You're each going to get your chance, so.
Yeah, certainly working within the high schools is going to be the key. That's where we have to reach individuals, and actually in the middle schools as well. There is something, it's a kind of a bus. It's a mobile technology lab that NWTC has now that I know Lakeshore Tech College is making use of as well, to again, directly go to high schools and give them a taste for the very high-tech and good-paying technology jobs that are available in manufacturing and the other sectors of our economy. But there have been some recent changes as far as cross-listing courses or expanding ways to get credit for college courses in high school, and different things to work towards some of those more vocational aspects. And I certainly, when I was in high school, I managed to start college with mid-junior standing. There were just a lot of opportunities available to me in high school. So we do that for the high achievers and for people basically that are looking at every kind of job. And there are a lot of good paying jobs in the economy, certainly like NWTC, and I'm sure there are plenty at Lakeshore Tech College as well. If you're looking at medical equipment or some of the health sector careers, you can immediately get a job that's paying $50,000, $60,000 a year. But again, it's getting over some of the stigma that people have attached to tech college or other programs. And I think we certainly want to look at vocational programs. Now there's a vocational diploma that you can get in the public school system. It's kind of a diploma plus. It's not something different or in any way lesser than an actual high school diploma, but it's a way of having a certification on your diploma that you have basically been exposed to and received some level of skill training in areas that are going to help you get a job right away out of high school. So,
Thank you. Jim?
My son recently started 7th grade at Washington Junior High here in Manitowoc. And going through the orientation with him, it was interesting because I walked through some of the old classrooms that I was in when I attended there. And especially going into the basement, and I don't know if you've been at Washington Junior High School, but that's where they had the shops classes. My son currently is taking a plastics class and an advanced computer design class. And he isn't in the metals yet, but those classes still exist there, and I'm very proud of that. What I'm very encouraged, though, as I just mentioned right now, is there's a computerized design class that he's interested in and he's taking. Technology is definitely great, and we've definitely expanded it. And I agree with Mr. Tittle on most of his comments that not everybody is going to go to college. Some people are going to work in the tech industry. Some people are going to work in vocational skills around in manufacturing and service industry here. But the interesting thing I find out is that, sure, we want to create these classroom settings and gear people to other positions. Well, guess what? When we cut funding to education programs and to vocational skills, we can't do that. We can't do that at all.
Thank you. Do we have another question? Charlie?
Yeah, this question is for Paul, and maybe we'll get responses from others. Citizens for a Strong America out of Columbus is distributing direct mail pieces calling your competitor, Paul, shocking, and how that Bry should come with a warning label, that he's created a dangerous economic environment in Wisconsin. How would you characterize, have you had any contact with Citizens for a Strong America? Are you pleased that they're distributing these campaign pieces? Do you stand behind them?
As I think most of you know, third-party groups get involved in every campaign. I had no idea. In fact, somebody brought it into me when that's how I first saw it. And then I went home that day, and my wife actually got it mailed to her. I didn't even get it. So, I don't know. The basic is, if I would have had anything to do with it, it would be illegal, first of all, and I would have nothing to do with that anyhow. So.
Yeah, Jim?
Well, I received it. I guess I wasn't convinced that I was that bad of a guy. At least my family members were in the same agreement. And I'm well aware of the law. Definitely third-party ads, I guess, under McCain, Feingold were actually eliminated, but they were ruled unconstitutional. That's why we've seen a plethora of this over the last 10 years. My concern is, and I understand that Mr. Tittle's not part of this, it's definitely a third-party thing, it's illegal, but I called for him in my press release last week to denounce this. As of right now, he has not. I will, if someone comes out in favor of me from a third-party ad that is directed, I guess, quote, from my side, I will definitely distance myself from that, and I will not endorse that as well. I don't want to see this thing. We don't need this. We have clear issues here that we're separate on here. Let's keep it to an issue-based campaign. We have different ideas. We don't need the third-party things, especially from radical groups that don't even reside within the state of Wisconsin. So.
I just have to say, I thought I just did denounce it, but,
Are you now?
oh, yeah, absolutely.
There. Now he did.
This isn't my district, and I've never seen that piece before, those pieces before, but I want to talk a little bit about political robocalls, because that's my bill. That's something that I appreciate that the Gannett papers have
Andre, I
talked.
think for just the sake of keeping us on task here.
But
do you
that's
wanna address-
third-party groups.
Well,
Talking about third-party groups doing things that we can't control, they like to bombard our...
somebody want to ask the question? And then
Can we get political campaigns on a no-call list?
There you go. Okay.
Absolutely, Jeff. That is exactly
Okay, thank you for...
that is exactly what my bill would do, and it does have bipartisan support, but unfortunately it does not have the support of either of the establishment political parties. And I've actually gone different parts of the state talking about this in the hopes that we can force it to a vote at some point, because if we're going to have a do not call list, then we may as well have something with teeth behind it as opposed to something where politicians carve themselves out as an exemption, which several other states don't have. To basically say that they, themselves or third-party groups have the ability to bug you at dinner time or whenever they please, with these, oftentimes crass or misleading political calls, things that a live operator would never even say. And it seems like just about every election cycle we hear something where they're talking about, either one blatantly misleading people, or there's no disclaimer, or something that is just beyond the pale and, not verifiable. So anyways, I just would certainly ask for your support with our local delegation and anyone else that we hopefully in the next session will be able to expand the do not call list to robocalls, including all political robocalls, as well as make that list permanent, which is something that virtually every other state does already. So, thank you.
Thank you. And I got just a comment. I don't have a hard line at home. I just have a cell phone, and I am on the do not call list. I guess I'm the lucky one because I don't get any robocalls. I've never had one. So,
What's your number?
no. Do we have any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'm Don Zimmer, Chairman of the Republican Party of Manitowoc County. Before I ask my question, I want to say that our county party rejects and finds abhorrent information and material being passed out that's scurrilous and slanderous. We completely reject it. You'll never find any of that in our office. And I'm sure I reflect the feeling of the state Republican Party as well. There are extremist groups on both sides, and we should reject them all. Now, my question...
Wait, can I just interject just a second? Because I think in fairness, I forgot, I did call on you before, and I'm not trying to be... If anybody else would have a question, if not, can we just give an opportunity in case there would be another, and then we can go back to you, Mr. Zimmer? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, just again, so that everybody gets an opportunity. That's my only, I should have stated that before. My apologies. Greg.
Steve. Gentlemen, I'm pleased that all of you have backgrounds in local government, and I hope recognize, this is my political statement, then I'll ask the question, that we're partners in this process of providing services and governance, and local government is just another interest group. We've enjoyed in Wisconsin since 1911 a shared revenues program that taps the statewide revenue sources, income taxes, sales taxes, shares them back at the local level in the interest of funding services, whether you're a rich town or a poor town, and likewise was intended to keep taxes down. Shared revenues over the last 10 years have gone from about 10% of state general purpose spending to 5%. They've been cut 3 separate times. So while the state budget's gone up 50% in the last decade, the real dollar spending for shared revenues and as a proportion of the state budget have both gone down. Now, there aren't any magic rabbits to pull out of the hat, but where do you stand on reaffirming this commitment to sharing statewide resources at the local level? Because we've got levy freezes We've got some very real constraints we're operating within. Mayor Nichols was part of a group from the Alliance of Cities last week, of the League of Municipalities, that urged the governor and the legislature, now that we may be seeing the start of a surplus, to revisit this round of cuts. Where do you stand on shared revenues? Is it just going to wither away, or does it need to be re-embraced as part of that partnership?
Okay, I'll go first. Okay. Excellent question, Greg. And as I mentioned last week at the Manitowoc Town Association held a little forum for all its candidates as well. One thing I've been very disappointed in when I see when people get elected from a local background and go down to Madison and that, or Dane County, that island surrounded by 71 counties of reality, is that they forget their local roots. A lot of them have been aldermen, they've been trustees of villages, they've been town chairmen. But somehow the partisan politics gets involved once again, and they seem to forget all that stuff. I will not do that. I will definitely represent the communities I represent. Manitowoc, Chilton, the village of Valders, the town of Newton. Those are the grassroots of our ability to carry out our functions. The state has to start realizing that local governments are not the enemy. They are an extension of state government, especially in regards to counties. You know, the county carries out the will of the state in regards to mandates. And I guess I'm digressing a little bit, but definitely unfunded mandates is one of my strong pet peeves, is that I will not support any mandate at the state level that isn't funded fully to the local government. As Greg mentioned, and I think, and maybe Kevin can correct me on this one, 1995 was the last year we've seen an increase in shared revenue. And we have seen a success of 3 decreases over the last 20-some years, close to 20 years. I am in full support of shared revenue, and I think we have to look at least keeping what we have right now and not decreasing it. I know, granted, it's always going to be a balance of trying to find that money and where are you going to take it from other places and things like that, but municipalities in the state of Wisconsin, they're the backbone of states. And all government is local, according to Tip O'Neill, the former House leader. And I believe in that strongly. And that's where I come from, a local government background.
Thanks, Jim. Paul?
Shared revenue is always a challenge because it has been going down, you're right. I think you have to maintain, and I think also with the mindset of the surplus that is coming, I can probably guess that there's dozens of people standing in line at the governor's office waiting to also share that surplus. I think what you need to do is we need to look at it all and see if the cities, if they're being cut, if they can be brought back up to a level, even like maintenance, then I think that would be a good thing, because you're right. Because then all of a sudden everything falls upon the local, because the shared revenue, then we have so much money, and then all of a sudden we're getting less, but things keep going up. So I think we have to look at minimum maintenance, and I don't know that increasing is going to be the answer either at this point, because we have to get the people back to work. I think that's the number one thing, because they're going to pay taxes, and then we're going to get more shared revenue. I think that's, there are reasons why there is a surplus now, and it's because of the work of the legislature the past 2 years and the work of Governor Scott Walker.
Andre?
Greg, thanks for bringing up that topic, because I know it's something that we've discussed many times and has been brought up in the course of several of the Manitowoc Chamber luncheons here. And you've heard me say this before, but within both shared revenue and school aids, there are winners and losers, which have largely served to prevent any sort of reforms of the overall program. We have a deeply flawed distribution, which has been done regardless of the political party of the governor. In this case, we had an 8% cut statewide that within the 2nd Assembly District initially was somewhere between 2% and 40% in cuts to shared revenue. Ultimately, we capped that at 25%, but it wasn't just 8% across the board. And that's the way that they've always plugged it into the formula. If you look at, statewide, state agencies were cut about 10%. A lot of that was to basically deal with the projected savings through Act 10. But what we've seen over time is that inequities are frozen and enlarged. And you've had very powerful legislative delegations like what you have in Milwaukee that have largely been able to exempt Milwaukee from perhaps the same shared revenue cuts that other municipalities have had over these past 10, 20 years. But you're talking about an opportunity now where state government is projected to be in the black, as opposed to what we've run for, regardless of the administration, continuous budget deficits, structural deficits that really take off the table any opportunity to look at reform. And I know that's one of the things that Governor Walker, I think, even talked about when he was with the Herald Times reporter and the Sheboygan Press editorial boards, is that this really gives us an opportunity to take a look at reforming something like shared revenue. If you can do something like a hold harmless, obviously that's very expensive, but I certainly have, willing to work with the League of Municipalities as far as any plans they might have that would, equitably address the situation for the entire state and get beyond some of that winners and losers that has been a roadblock to real reform.
Thank you, gentlemen. Do we have any other questions from the audience, and preferably, first of all, from people who have not asked questions yet, and if not, we'll circle back through to anybody who wishes to repeat. Charlie, we should have known you.
Was your question asked?
That's all right, go ahead.
So in all fairness, nobody did raise their hand, so Charlie gets another.
I just want to know an issue or two for Jim, and for all three of you, that you envision maybe coming up in the next 2-year session in January, where you're going to be out of the mainstream for your party, and you're going to be willing to not go along with your party leadership. What would be an issue where, if you are a bit of a maverick independent, where you're going to show your disagreement with your party leadership?
Well, we have a hypothetical question there.
Very hypothetical. I don't think it's tough to answer, but it is tough to answer, and it's a generic question response as well. I think in regards to taxes, we're talking about increasing them. I will probably be that maverick. I will be that maverick. Distribution might be where those taxes are going to go. That might be pretty sensible, but to increase them right now, I don't think is the right way to go. But I also we have to look at the levy limits that were placed on local municipalities. Whether they're fair or not, as a local elected official, I guess I believe in home rule, but modest controls on property tax rates, I don't think are unacceptable. But there is the older version from 1992 that is actually, I use the example over in Winnebago County. Mark Harris is the county executive in Winnebago County. He serves on the Lakeland Care District Board with myself. His county is actually falling behind. I mean, even with growth, they can't increase their property tax levy rate at all. That doesn't seem right. You obviously don't want to increase it so people can't afford it, but something just doesn't seem right there. We need to look at those formulas again. But I will be that maverick when it comes to stuff like that with taxes. I mean, it's not the time to increase personal income taxes, definitely.
Thank you, Jim. Andre?
Sure.
Well, I'm sure there's other things that aren't coming to mind at the moment, but there are a few things that I know that will be coming up again, I'm sure, where I am outside of, a good chunk of my party. Certainly, when we're talking about, I don't know if it would be this way when it actually would come to a vote, but talking about robocalls. But also, the rent-to-own industry was looking to loosen some restrictions. They are considered predatory by and large by the Veterans Administration and a variety of other groups. And so I did already vote against that bill, and likely will be coming up again. Taxi cab medallions for the city of Milwaukee, kind of a free market issue. Again, I'm not quite sure why we're even bringing it up, but that's one where I again voted against the majority of my party. I did vote against my party, and this will hopefully be coming up again in terms of restoring something that was taken out by the legislature and signed into law, but basically being able to suspend unemployment payments for those who fail drug tests. I think that's unfortunately a way that people are otherwise enabled to continue bad behavior and not get the help that they need. That was a change that we made in the budget. It was taken out as a result of a UIAC compromise. I did vote against my party in not going along with that. as well as, let's see, not allowing DATCAP agents to go on private property for certain pest control investigations when there's no cause to do so.
Paul?
Sorry.
Well, there's several things that I probably won't be well received by either party. The one thing on the back of one of my lit pieces is waste and fraud. You know, I want to go after waste and fraud because there's a lot of waste and fraud within, I think, the programs that are within the government, and some of them may even be endorsed and funded by, you know, the Republicans. And the other thing that I probably is term limits. There are many people out there. In fact, I've only run across, actually just recently, ran across somebody that wasn't going to vote for me anyhow, but they said they were not in favor of term limits. But I think we should look at the idea. And I don't think any politicians, because a lot of them are career politicians, and they want they're taking away their livelihood. So I think we should look at it, look at maybe 8, 12 years. I think we just need to look at it and explore the possibilities of what could happen and what would happen if we ended up going down that road.
Thank you, gentlemen. I believe we have time for one more question.
We got one from Mr. Trask. Want to have one from the other side?
Well, no, he did ask one before, so it's his opportunity. So if for a second one, anybody, or else we're going to say going once, going twice, gone. Okay, well, sensing none, I thank our candidates for participating. I thank all of you for participating, and I think it's safe to say, whether you're whatever side of the aisle, that we should all get out and vote on November 6th. So thank you all for being here.